Good evening. How are y'all doing? Hey, I want to thank you all for being a part of tonight. All right. I want to thank you all for being part of our New Year's contest. How are those New Year's resolutions coming, by the way?
Very good.
Yeah, all on the way? Very, very good. So welcome to the Gradient tonight, all right? So the Gradient really is all about how do you actually get to your New Year's goals. I get a neat vantage point from where I sit. I get to deal with all of you and more. And I get to see the people that reach their health goals, and I get to see the people that fail miserably, all right? And I get to see the people that fail miserably every year for the same exact goal, all right? So what tonight is all about is, hey, if, you know, the people that make the greatest permanent lifestyle changes are when people could just focus on just one little thing, but they were consistent about it, all right? In other words, this time of year, it's like, okay, it's the new year, it's resolution time, I'm gonna, and that's where they fail. Tonight, it's all about, hey, do this, do A before B, and B before C, all right? We're gonna talk about different aspects of wellness, and as we go through this process, I want you to just think to yourself, hey, how do I do with that? Today's all about picking the things that are the smallest things that make the biggest amount of difference. This time of year, we all try to do way too much. So we're going to go through different aspects or different umbrellas of wellness. Really, wellness is a big web, all right? And as we go through these different topics, I want you to think, hey, where do I got to start? Am I doing good with this, or do I need help? And if you need help, as much as I love talking about the weather and the Bruins and the lack of snow, I really would rather be spent talking about these things in our adjustment times. So really, I want this to be the beginning of a conversation, okay? All right? So everyone ready to go? Before we do that, let's just maybe watch one little story about how just 1 degree can make a world of difference. Less than a second. Not a lot of time, and you're going to see that results in big, big changes in money. Half. Second and a half cost him $500,000. And that's really the whole point, is what are we not doing? What do we need to do? What's that one little degree of change that we need to make that's going to change in a world of way of results? Think about the Pilgrims. If they were just 1 degree off, we'd be celebrating the Plymouth palm tree, not the rock, right? So again, small changes consistently over time makes a world of difference. All right? So if you were to change just one thing about your diet, I want you to focus on your whole grains. All right? Now, raise your hand. Is whole grain better? True or false? So raise your hand if you think this is true. Is whole grain better than whole wheat?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why?
Different kinds of grain, different kinds of
Okay, so
fiber.
this is the ultimate question. So thanks for whoever played. All right, but when we talk something about being whole grain, right? When we buy it, we make a sandwich, right? We're talking about the whole grain of wheat. All right, whole grain could be a rice kernel, it can be quinoa. In other words, whole grain just means that you literally have the entire entity of the grain. All right, now what's important is that really is made up of 3 things. You have your bran, okay? Bran's important because that has your fiber, your minerals, and your vitamins. All right, then we have the endosperm, which actually makes up the vast majority of the whole grain. And then lastly, you have your germ. All right. Now, germ has your protein, good protein, and it has your good fats. All right. Now, who was here? Little Chef Tony. Everyone remember Chef Tony, right? Something that you learned from Chef Tony is enzymes are what? Protein. Right? Enzymes are really the living component of food that really is what gives food life. All right. So when you have an apple and you sit it and leave it on your counter for a week and it rots and decays, that's the enzymes that do that. It's the living component. All right. Now, what happens is when we go from whole grain to whole wheat, there's an element of refining. Basically, the whole grain needs to be heated. There's actually some mechanical breakdown of that. So what happens is you're actually going to be losing some of the fiber, but more importantly, some of the minerals and the vitamins, and of course, the protein, the fat, and the enzymes in these 2 parts. All right. Now, whole grain and whole wheat, for many purposes, can be almost the same, and we're going to talk about that next. But what happens is when we go from a whole wheat down to the next level of processing, that's when we lose all of our nutrients. So that's any type of white bread, French bread, white bread. I mean, anything that is white. And basically, what happens is when we get to white bread, we've removed all of the bran, we've removed all of the germ, and what's left is just the endosperm, which is the starch. It's the junk. It's the filler. All right? And in order to get it there, there's basically what has to happen is, well, that flour is actually bleached. All right? And actually things like iron and things of that nature, nutrients are actually put back into the flour because they've taken so many nutrients out. So when we artificially put something back into something that's there naturally, does that ever work the way we want it to? No, never, 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 never. All right? Now what's important is, hey, when you're going from whole wheat to whole grain to whole wheat, it's a change. It's a small change, but it's a change. But when you go from whole wheat down to white, it's a gigantic change. And what you're losing are things like calcium, you need that for your bones, things like magnesium and phosphorus for muscles. You're losing things like iron, you need that for your blood, and basically your B vitamins, you need that for energy. You're losing all the good stuff when you have white bread. All right? So really, a really good resource is this www.wholegrainscouncil.org. All right? So what you're going to find out, there's a section that's called Choosing Whole Grains, right? And what you're going to, when you go into the grocery store, you may see this stamp of saying, hey, this is a whole grain product. But when you read through that web page here that you're all going to do when you go home, all right, if you print it out and you bring it back to me, I'll give you 10 tickets towards your iPod or your massage or whatnot, all right? Hey, it's on camera. You heard it here, right? So go home, seriously, print that, Choosing Whole Grains page, and you're actually going to find that, hey, you know what? The FDA says that there's certain guidelines for something to be called whole grain, and just whenever there's guidelines, there's loopholes, isn't there? So something can be multi-whole grain, all right? For in other words, say it has 2 types of grains in it, all right? It's 10% one grain, and it's, say, 90% the other grain, all right? And just say this is actually whole grain, and this is just, junk or ground all the way down to it's and refined, so it has no nutrients. You can ultimately call that whole grain. So spend some time on that website and learn the loopholes of, hey, says it's whole grain, but it's not really whole grain. I mean, it's mostly whole grain, in other words. So whenever there's, criteria, there's always loopholes to get around that criteria. So that's a great resource for that. All right. So again, if you were to just change one thing about your diet, and when I think about diet, that's the food that you give your body. All right. It's get more whole grains in your diet. All right. Now, if we were to talk about your metabolism, metabolism is different than whole grains, than diet rather. All right. Diet's the food you give it. Metabolism is how well your body can extract the nutrients from the food you give it and actually use it to run your body. Does that make sense? So diet and metabolism are similar, but they're different. Everyone gets that, right? All right. So what I want you to do, as far as this goes, is I want you to have some consciousness around what's a good carb and what's a bad carb. All right? Raise your hand if you've heard of the glycemic index before. All right, so some of you guys have been to the workshop, right? So here's a perfect example. All right? So here's long grain rice, okay? All right, and that's the equivalent of, say, a whole grain, okay? And it's what we call a low glycemic food, all right? Glycemic food is basically a measure of what it does to your insulin levels. Make sense? Okay? So you have a long grain rice, which is the purest, most, unprocessed form of rice. Then you have a brown rice, which is really, an equivalent to, say, whole wheat, okay? So again, it's processed, but not too much. Okay, and then you have instant rice, which is like white bread. It's the most processed of processed. All right? So basically, you have our good carbs, our kind of good carbs, and our bad carbs, right? And what do they measure? What it does to insulin. So basically, when we have a bad carb, our insulin levels go way up. When we have a good carb or even a medium carb, basically, insulin level goes up in a controlled fashion, and it goes down in a controlled fashion. See how when our insulin spikes, see how, well, one, it peaks sooner, all right? It drops faster, and then it does this rebound thing. Has anyone ever had a bagel or Chinese food, and you're like, that's delicious? And then maybe an hour later, you're like, I'm starving. I'm hungry, right? Chinese food is a perfect example, right? So here I am. I'm full. I stuffed. I ate too much. Someone dragged me away from the table. Where's the two-wheeler, right? And then a half hour later, again, it's, what are those fortune cookies? I didn't eat the fortune cookies. I need a snack. All right? So what you need to understand there are two very important hormones, something called leptin. And leptin tells your brain, hey, you're full. All right? Now, what you need to know is high insulin levels, all right, when we eat bad carbs, that decreases your leptin, and it's going to leave you satisfied. So you have less of the hormone that tells you you're full, so you're not going to be full. And at the same time, there's ghrelin, right? And what ghrelin does is it tells you you're hungry. All right? Now, it has a different relationship with it. High insulin, instead of decreasing it, it actually increases ghrelin. Remember, it makes you hungry. So wait a second, I just had a bagel. All right? I shut down, so it's leaving me less, I'm full, and I'm getting more, I'm hungry. So am I going to eat more or am I going to eat less? All right? And here I am, I want to lose weight. So I'm going to be very conscious about counting my calories and things of that nature. But does everyone get that if you're eating the wrong type of food, it's going to play some dangerous games with your biochemistry, and it's going to force you, even though you're as full can be, it's going to force, you're not going to feel that fullness. So that's huge. That's a big, big deal. So again, if you go to glycemicindex.com, or it's not hard to find glycemic lists, you can make smarter decisions as far as what types of vegetables and fruits and things of that nature. If you look at, hey, watermelon, is watermelon good? Yeah, watermelon's good, right? But it's very, very high glycemic, right? So, is that maybe the best snack food? No, maybe it's not all that filling because what it's going to do to my sugar. But at the same token, it also has a lot of fiber too, right? So so watermelon's good. So in other words, this does not exist in a vacuum. There's other things you need to consider, but it is a good tool of saying, hey, I could have this or that. Well, this is there, and this is here, so, I'm going with that one, all right? Anyone have any questions about the glycemic index, insulin, leptin, ghrelin? Because it can be kind of a confusing thing. And I want this to be more of a conversation than a lecture. So feel free to shoot questions or comments or, political statements as you need. All right? So everyone get that? No political statements. All right. One thing, if you were just to change one thing, I get this question asked to me all the time. Hey, Dr. Chris, is there one vitamin or supplement that every human being on the planet needs to be on? And I would say, well, yes. Prior to Mr. Crosby 7 months ago, I would say, yes, there's really 1.5 things you need to be on. You need to be on fish oil or essential fatty acids and vitamin G during the winter. But since our little addition and the research we put in as far as how do you develop a nice healthy gut or GI system, today if you ask me, is there something that every human being should really be on? I would say fish oil still. Seriously, start taking fish oil. And I would also say, you know what, vitamin G during the winter, but also we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about next. Does anyone have a guess as far as what it is? They're your friendly bacteria. They're called your... You got it. Okay? And I'll tell you why I think everyone should be on a probiotic as we go here. Can you see? You good? Yeah, make yourself at home. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you guys have questions, just raise your hand. This is for you guys. So
Why vitamin D only in the winter?
we'll get there. Stay tuned. But your short answer is we're in vitamin D winter. Your body doesn't produce it naturally. But we'll get back to that. All right. So probiotics, they're a big deal. Why are they a big deal? Well, guess what? You have 500 different types or different strains or families of bacteria in your body. 500 different families. All right? You have more of these little healthy, friendly little bacteria than you have of your own cells. You got about 100 trillion of these little friendly bacteria. About 60 trillion cells, depending on what you read. All right? So we have 500 species of these things. Actually, if you took all the probiotics out of your body, it'd weigh about 2.5 pounds. So does anyone else get the idea that they're probably there for a reason, if there's so much of them, right? And they are. They're there for a reason. And what we do know is that they have antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, anti-allergenic properties, or the things or the byproducts that these good bacteria produce through these things. They're also function as antioxidants. Antioxidants are important for preventing cell damage within the GI tract. All right, and is colon cancer a big deal in this country? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you better believe it. Okay. Neurotransmitters. You guys ever heard that expression, trust your gut? We're going to explore this in detail, but literally, your gut is where it's really important for your body's production of serotonin. All right, serotonin, we all know that as your feel-good hormone, right? And if you have less serotonin, do you feel better or worse? Right? The gut is really important for making that serotonin, and we'll get to that in a second. And also fighting inflammation. Probiotics are really, really important for fighting inflammation, especially locally within the GI tract, but also throughout the entire body too. All right? So what you need to know is, the biggest question, the first question I always get is, why? Why do I need bacteria? Why do I need probiotics? I think I'm doing pretty good. I haven't had these my whole life. Well, the reality is most people do need to supplement with probiotics is because we've kind of tinkered with the natural colonization process. So how our body gets good bacteria is during a normal vaginal delivery where the child is exposed to the birth canal. That's the first time. All right? So if you have a C-section, are you exposed to mom's natural flora or natural bacteria? Do you get them? No, you don't get them. All right? Anytime the child nurses, there's bacteria on the breast, isn't there? All right? Who's seen my little Crosby? Where do you see him when you come in? You see him on the floor. It's not because I dislike my child and I'm like, work! But it's because we want him on a floor for a reason. He's playing with different toys, and where'd they go? In their mouth. So that just the natural process of being a kid, playing outside, that's how we get our bacteria. Okay? To be a kid today, that's not always like that. And maybe it's the C-section, and then it's they were maybe formula fed, and maybe they don't play in the dirt like we used to. So in other words, does everyone get lifestyle? Life's different now. When I was a kid, the only rule was be home before the lights are on the street lights. Now it's just not that way. Antibiotics. At some point, most of us have taken an antibiotic, right? Well, antibiotics, they go on a seek and destroy mission for all bacteria, including the good ones that you have. All right, if you've been on an extended period of antibiotics, then it's even a bigger deal. Antibacterial stuff. I mean, hey, we live in this Purell environment, right? So some researchers believe that, hey, our need to be super sanitary, our bodies are experiencing bacteria at the rate that we used to. So again, another reason why we don't have the bacteria that we've had in the past. Pasteurization's a good thing, right? All right, but pasteurization also kills bacteria. Some of them are good too. All right. So some people say, well, where do I get my probiotics naturally in food? Well, I would say, well, yogurt is a great one, but also fermented food. But if it's industrial, it's been pasteurized. So not going to happen. Again, industrial pesticides, industrialized farming, again, they're there to kill the big bugs and the little critters too. All right, so there's less bacteria on in our fruits and our vegetables that we eat every day. And here's the big one. The real reason why most of us have issues with our probiotic or with our friendly bacteria is the standard American diet, the SAD diet. All right, high protein, low fiber, high fat, refined carbs. That's food for your bad bacteria. You need a good ratio, 85% good, 15% bad. All right? The bad bacteria love junk food. The good bacteria, they hate junk food. All right? So if we're fueling the bad bacteria by the fuel that we give it, who's going to make more little baby bacteria? The bad ones, right? So I'll give you 5 reasons to take probiotics. All right? Dr. Chris, do I need a multivitamin? Perhaps, but you know what? Probiotics are your 24/7 multivitamin. All right? They produce B vitamins, which are really important for you to get energy out of food. Guess what? Your probiotics produce B vitamins, especially B12. Vitamin K, that's really important. You need vitamin K for vitamin D to work on calcium. So, all right, it's Batman, Robin, and, I don't know, the butler. All right? The butler would be vitamin K. All right? Calcium and vitamin D would be Batman, Robin. We all got that, though, right? All right? This is a big one, too. They're critical with the absorption of minerals, calcium, magnesium, and iron. All right? Calcium is important because it runs our muscles, it runs our nerves, it runs our body. That's why our bones are made out of it. Magnesium is critical because that's involved in all sorts of biochemical reactions, and our body has a hard time absorbing that. And iron is really what brings oxygen, holds the oxygen in our blood. So is that good or bad if our body has a hard time getting that? Is that a bad thing if our body has a hard time getting this anyways? Can you see how that can compound the problem? Short-chain fatty acids, again, that's something that harder to find in food, but your body needs it. Your probiotics produce it naturally. Breakdown fermentation of non-digestible carbs and starches. So again, these probiotics are really important for the breakdown or digestive process as a whole. All right? So, anyone want to lose weight without exercise? Has everyone else seen this commercial on or this thing on the news where researchers have now developed an exercise pill? I swear to you, I can't make this stuff up. Am I the only one? Yeah, so stay tuned, guys. There's a pill that you can take that will give you all the benefits of exercise, and you won't even have to touch a weight. Side effects include, I haven't heard them yet, but basically, it's well known that people that are obese have different populations or different types of bacteria in their digestive tract. And part of what we think is that those unfriendly bacteria that we find in people that are overweight, they're more efficient at taking the energy from the food and putting it in fat cells. All right? So in this study, it was a 12-week study, all right, and the subjects took probiotics, all right, and basically the group that took probiotics had a 4.6 reduction in their visceral fat, okay, and that's a big deal. That's the fat that kills you, and also 3.3% subcutaneous fat around their belly, all right. So 4.3 and 3.3% are huge numbers in body fat percentage. Basically, on average, the subjects lost about 1.4% of their body weight, so that's 10 to 20 pounds for most people, all right. So who wants to lose 10 pounds without exercising? Oh, just one? Right? All of us, right? All of us want to do that. In other words, our breakdown or our digestion was more efficient when we had the right players done in there. All right? And then again, European Journal of Clinical Nutrition. This is not from Cosmo. All right? So probiotics and inflammation. After 3 weeks, Subjects that were given probiotics had significant improvements in markers of inflammation. C-reactive protein, inflammatory cytokinins. All right. So basically, if you have an inflammatory bowel condition, all right, you need probiotics because they dampen the inflammatory process. Inflammation is important for healing, but when it runs haywire, that's when it becomes a problem. Probiotics are the reins on that inflammation process. Hey, slow down, speed up. You need that to happen. Again, World Journal of Gastroenterology. Probiotics in your immune system. All right. So do you know if we won't do this, but if you were to take your intestines and just spread them all out, that would cover enough surface area to cover a tennis court. Okay, you have about 200 meters square of intestines. All right. So what you got to understand is when it comes to good bacteria, bad bacteria, remember, 85% good, 15% bad. And the way that this works is it's competitive real estate, not protective real estate. We'll change that one. But basically, good bacteria lives here. Bad bacteria can't move in the neighborhood. Good bacteria is going to produce substances and compounds that want to make more good bacteria move in, all right, and prevent bad bacteria from moving into the neighborhood, all right. So basically, the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, they're fighting for space, and they're also they're basically fighting for nutrition, all right. So one, it depends on the nutrition. Hey, if you give nutrition that's better for bad bacteria, guess what? You have a bad bacteria problem. All right, versus if you feed it good bacteria, or good food, the good bacteria are going to flourish. But at the same time, they're both fighting for nutrients. All right? So, yeah. So where the good bacteria are, the bad bacteria aren't. All right? The good bacteria help your immune system because 80% of your immune system's in your GI tract. You know? I mean, that's pretty important. Okay? So basically, your probiotics, and we're trying to figure this out, they somehow teach our immune system the difference between self and non-self. So basically, allergies, or food allergies especially, the result of your immune system being a little over-anxious. Does that make sense? All right, so what these do is they just say, hey, that's part of us. Don't attack it. Be nice to that cell. All right? So that's really important. And lastly, this is very, 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 very interesting. Oh, actually, no, we're not there yet. Guess this. Non-vaccinated subjects, all right, were given probiotics for 3 months, and they wanted to see, hey, how would that affect the severity or the intensity of their flu or their cold symptoms? So anyone interested in this? So get this. They just monitored them, and they found that white blood cells, especially the T cells, all right, if you're here for our flu workshop or our immune system workshop, you know your T cells are like your Navy SEALs. All right, so higher T cells, you had higher monocytes, and that was all just within the first 14 days. It's like, hey, whoa, 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 my immune army is out to play. What's going on here? All right, now down the road, they got sick. The people that took probiotics got sick 14% less. Their symptoms when they did get sick were severely less, and people that have fevers had fever for 55% less time. So our probiotics, big part of your immune system. You better believe it, 80% of that immune system lives in that gut. Okay, so here we are, probiotics, anxiety, and depression. So again, we talked about how, trust your gut. Your gut is controlled by something called your enteropathic nervous system. It's like your second brain, all right? And basically, we've known for a long time that your brain and your gut, your enteropathic nervous system, they talk to one another via something called your vagus nerve, which is actually a nerve, a cranial nerve, it comes out of the brain. So in other words, we have this structure already in our place that's like, your gut and your head talk to one another. That's interesting. Interesting.
So that means what happens in Vegas doesn't stay in Vegas.
You got it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I knew something was coming from you. Yeah, so what happens in Vegas if it's your cranial nerve 10? Definitely doesn't stay. Yeah, awesome. Okay, I'm going to make that my own the next time I do that. So basically, supplementation with probiotics result in favorable changes in the neurotransmitter GABA, all right, in regions of the brain associated with anxiety and depression. So in other words, you took probiotics, we looked in the brain, and we saw that the brain produced more of this chemical or neurotransmitter involved with anxiety and depression, and it found it in the areas that the brain that controls that. So it's a good thing. All right. There's actually some really interesting studies that I didn't put on the slides because basically the researchers were like, we injected the mouse with a certain thing, we gave him colitis, and then the mouse displayed signs of anxiety. How do you know if a mouse is anxious? So I said, if I ever get any questions on this, I'm toast. I'd be like, the mouse was less anxious after the probiotics. He was smoking a cigarette. I don't know. But so basically, the two are linked. All right, and this is like the next forefront, I guess, in research. In other words, this is where it's going. But again, it's important. So things to avoid, hey, the refined foods, the boxed cereals, the chips, the white flours, the frozen dinners. Again, those are all, you know what not to eat. It's the things you know you shouldn't be eating. Here's another reason not to eat them, because it's killing your good bacteria and fueling your bad. All right? Where do you get it? Greek yogurt, miso, those are the best. You can always get products that have been fermented, like sauerkraut or olives or pickles or things of that nature. But if you buy them commercially, they're pasteurized. So really, we're back to yogurt, miso. All right. Ultimately, you really need to supplement, because yogurt's only going to give you a Lactobacillus acidophilus, just one. You need a whole spectrum. You need a whole family. All right. Now, as far as our conversations go from this, let's have a conversation as far as if you should be taking them and how often you should be taking them and things of that nature. If you want to take probiotics just for wellness, then I will put you on one type of brand, a particular brand. We're just adding more good bacteria. If you got some GI issues or some autoimmune issues or some other health issues, then we really need to have a conversation, and I will put you on a different type of protocol. Sometimes it involves killing the bad, healing the GI tract, introducing food that is good for the good bacteria, and then introducing more good bacteria. It's very involved. Not everyone can do it because it's involved. So, I mean, either way, if this is something that you say, you know what, I probably could use some help with that, we need to have a conversation about that. So we all agree? Till Monday or tomorrow or whenever we meet again? Miso is like miso soup. It's a fermented soy product, I believe. Yeah, it's delicious, miso. Now I like miso soap. Anyone else like miso?
Acquired taste.
Thank you, Barbara. That's just a great way of putting it. You're always so eloquent. It's just an acquired taste. So again, if Sanyaga, that's a great question. If you asked me a year ago, I would have said you really want a product that requires refrigeration. But more research says that, hey, you know what? Those bacteria, you're going to eat them. They got to go through your stomach. They got to go through your GI tract, and then they do their thing. So they need to be tough enough to stay there, to get there. So they need to be pretty tough. So as it turns out, refrigeration is not as big of a deal as previously thought. All right.
You can still take probiotics that are refrigerated.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
still good.
Yeah, in other words, if you have a probiotic that requires refrigeration, I wouldn't say that's a junky product, or that's not the pivot point. That's part of it. Does that answer your question there, darling?
Sure.
Okay, good. Any more questions about probiotics? Okay. So, if you were to change one thing about your workout, I want you to focus on intensity. Okay. Why do I want you to focus on? Yeah, all of you just went. Crap. I was hoping you would say, walk slower and I'll get... No. So we want to focus on your intensity, because the harder you work, the more you're going to release growth hormone, and you need growth hormone. All right? Muscle fibers come in 3 sizes, small, medium, and large. After around age 30, we start to lose our large muscle fibers. That's why after a certain period of time, us men need suspenders, because our pants are falling off of our tush. Our large muscle fibers live in our tush. All right? So, yeah, we lose those after 30. No comment. All right? By focusing on intensity, we are forcing your body to release human growth hormone. Remember Rodney, right? Our buddy Rodney Harrison got in trouble for HGH a couple years ago. Why not produce it naturally? Right? So if you focus on your intensity, growth hormone is going to happen. You need it for fat burning, anti-aging, healing, muscle development, and your metabolism. All right? Growth hormone is a big deal. So, when it comes to your workouts, there's what? Resistance training, and there's cardiovascular training. What do you do first? Raise your hand if you do cardio first. Raise your hand if you do weights first. Raise your hands if you're not doing anything right at all right now. All right. here's the story. You want to do your resistance training first, all right? Why? Muscle loves to eat carbohydrate, all right? So if you're doing a resistance training program, hey, why hit the easy button, right? Hey, I got energy right there in me. So the muscles wants to use carbohydrate. It's going to use carbohydrate. It's going to be forced to use carbohydrate if you do your resistance training first. Now, when you do cardiovascular training, you're burning a little bit of both, but you're going to burn more of one than the other based off of how hard you're working. So the whole concept here is hit the resistance training or the weights first, force your body to use the carb. By the time you get to your cardio, all that's left is fat. Who wants to burn more fat? Right? Everyone wants to burn more fat. Burning fat's good. We'll get to, there's another reason why you want to do your cardio second. We'll get there in a second. But you also want to hit failure within a certain range. Okay? So failure means, hey, you know what? My goal is to get bigger. I want to look like Craig. I want bigger, right? So I'm going to do 8 to 10 repetitions. All right? If my goal was to be tone, right? We want the skinny, lean guys. I'd be doing 12 to 15. Just general workouts, 10 to 12. So does anyone get your muscles going to change based on how many repetitions you give it? All right, we all got that, right?
Lower weight with the higher reps.
Yeah. So like for instance, if I'm doing 15 repetitions, I'm going to have to use less weight than if I'm going for mass. All right? Now here's very, very, very important. All right, you want to hit failure somewhere within that range. So, for example, I'm going for mass because, hey, beach time's coming, right? So if I can only get 7 repetitions, too heavy. If I can get 11, it's too light. All right, so you want to tinker with your weights a little bit. You want to feel like your last set, like you can do another. All right, or maybe just a half one. All right. So that's really, 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 really important. I was a personal trainer for 8 years. And I would teach someone a program and say, hey, you're good. I'm going to set you loose for a little bit, and I'll see you in about 4 to 6 weeks, and then we're gonna go to the next step. And I would, leave them their chart, and then when I saw them 4 to 6 weeks later, they're using the same weight. It's like, you increased your weight every week when we were doing this together, but just why? And it's well, I'm still stuck. So increasing your weight is going to be what's going to actually force your body to make these changes because it's going to release growth hormone. All right? So in other words, if you're just going through the motions and you're like, said I'm going to do 12 and I got 12 and I probably could have done 20. Not telling anybody. You're going through the motions, you're not releasing growth hormone, you're not going to get the maximum benefit. All right? You want to use circuit training. Okay? Circuit training is when you use strategically grouped muscle groups. All right? And there's no rest. It's going to increase your metabolism for 24 or 48 hours rather. These are good examples. I'm going to do a chest press, a bench press. Then I'm going to go right over to the row machine and do a row. Okay? Hey, maybe the next time I go back, I just barely got 10 the last time, so maybe I got to use a little less weight that second time. Oh, but I still hit failure right in that range of 2 repetitions. Oh, then I'm going back to the row. All right? That's maybe one day. Then the next day I come in and I do biceps and then triceps. And then the next day I come in, I do shoulders and I do legs. So there's infinite ways that we can group your body. One of the reasons we have you doing this exercise journal is I want to know how many days you have to work out, how much time you have to work out in those days, and based off those 2 things, I can write you up a program that says, hey, Lisa, on this day you do this and this. On this day, when you do this and this, and so on and so forth. And so, in other words, we can customize your workout to your availability. I just need to know it. All right? So again, good conversation for our next visit, yes? Now, as far as our cardio training goes, we're going to do that second. Why? Because we're going to tap out the carb, force us to use fat. But as I'm doing my weights first, I'm doing a circuit training, right? And I'm sweating. Whew, I got a little cardio component to that. Ooh, man. I'm releasing something called catecholamines. Catecholamines, around a half an hour, are going to basically turn your body into a fat-burning machine. Who wants to be a fat-burning machine? Takes you a half hour to do it, right? So if I do my weights first and I step on the treadmill, minute 1, I'm a fat-burning machine, right? Versus if I did my cardio first and I did 30 minutes of cardio, and oh, it was just awesome. And I just step off the treadmill at minute 30. Do you understand that I just turned into a fat burning machine? And I'm not going to burn as many calories doing weights as I would with cardio. So we want to set the stage for your cardio. Okay. Also, if we're doing our resistance training, that gives our muscle tissues and our tendons and our ligaments another opportunity to warm up, less injuries. Beyond that, what you're going to do is interval training. Okay. Circuit training is with weights. Interval training is with cardio. All right. You're going to start using easy to hard ratios. 2 to 1, then 1 to 1, and then 1 to 2. All right? So basically, what that can be is 2 minutes walking slow. Intensity's king, right? 1 minute, as hard as I can go. Dr. Chris, I can't run for a minute. You crazy? All right, fine. Walk a minute. Can you run for 30 seconds? I can't run for 30 seconds. Can you run for 30? For 15? You know? So does everyone get, we're just going to use those ratios. And if we have you run for 15 seconds and then walk for 30, then we'll do it. All right? But every 6 weeks, we're going to change our interval. The body changes as long as you're changing your workouts. So 6 weeks later, we're going to do 1 to 1. And then 6 weeks later, we're going to do 1 minute slow, 2 minutes of a run. Okay? Now, for instance, when we were, teaching Gina how to, run, time was not a good way of doing it. She didn't like treadmills. She didn't want to go in the gym, but she wanted to be outside. So basically, it was 2 telephone pole lengths. I'm going to walk. And then I'm going to run from 1 telephone pole length to the other. Some of you have elliptical machines, all right? So maybe that's 2 minutes on a flat, 1 minute on an incline, or 2 minutes light resistance, 1 minute hard resistance. So does everyone get, there's lots of ways that we can increase your intensity. We just don't want to do the same thing every single time, you know? So if, in other words, if I'm focusing on speed one day, I might want to do distance a little bit later, or vice versa. You want to keep your body guessing. Questions on that? Good. Focus on intensity first, total distance, total time, all that other stuff second. If you focus on intensity, all the other stuff is just going to happen. All right, if you were to change one thing about your immune system, it would be take vitamin D. Vitamin D is actually a hormone. Oops. We misclassified it way back when. Your body produces vitamin D naturally, but only between October and April, we're in what's called vitamin D winter. If you live north of Atlanta, the sun's rays are not strong enough to create vitamin D. All right. What happens is, say, May through September, a cholesterol molecule is hit by a ray of sunshine, okay, and that begins the process that becomes vitamin D. So the big deal is if you wear makeup, I don't, but if you were to wear makeup or sunscreen, right, that's going to block your body's production of vitamin D. So so I always recommend that you get your vitamin D levels checked twice a year. And at the end of the summer, your vitamin D levels may not be as high as you think they are. This summer, I was like, yeah, got a good tan, well, for a white guy, and my vitamin D is going to be awesome. And it was good, but it wasn't as high as I thought it was going to be because I'm white and pasty, and every time I go out, I got to put some suntan lotion on me. So suntan lotion does have an effect. How much vitamin D do you need to take? It really depends on what your levels are. We can guess, 3,000, 5,000. Those are the things that I will typically tell you if you haven't had a blood test. But if I know your blood test levels, I can very specifically recommend an amount. If not, I'm going to recommend an amount that I know will not bring you to toxic levels. Okay? Right? I'm just not going to toxify you. Sorry, But I'm much more comfortable saying, hey, you know what, Neil, you can take 8,000 international units of vitamin D if you have a blood test. All right? Barbara's never had you have. But say Barbara never had a vitamin D test, I would say, hey, she probably could take 8,000, but for liability and for your safety, let's give you 3 or 5, which may not be as effective as what you really need. So please help me help you get your vitamin D levels checked. Please, please, please. So that should have answered your question because we're in vitamin D winter. The angle of the sun and the strength of the rays doesn't start that cascade. Mr. Jim.
The vitamin D blood test, is that blood test that you typically get during a physical or something?
So when that time comes, talk to me. So for instance, if you're a female, it's the conversation's really easy. Doctor, I have concerns about my bone density health. I really have to insist that we take my vitamin D levels. Sure, no problem. If you're a male, you're going to have a little harder time. Your doctor may or may not see the need to take your vitamin D levels. It really depends if they have read the research or not. So if they say, what do you need your vitamin D levels checked? Say, stay right there. I'll be right back, and run. Grab your file, run. Because honestly, this is like one of the most. This is one of the if you're in healthcare, that's one of the things you're watching and you're researching. All right, and if they're not, run. All right, but the blood test should be specifically for D3. Okay, and there's a lab. You may want to ask if it's done by Quest Lab. That's the best lab to do it. Okay. So again, any questions on your vitamin D3? Why do you need to take vitamin D3? Well, none of us are producing it naturally right here, right now. All right. It boosts your cellular immune system, which is the part of your immune system that kills viruses. Who wants help killing viruses? Right? If you're going to get a cold, you're going to get a flu, basically that little bugger is going to come into the upper respiratory tract. Vitamin D basically helps with the mucus that protects your upper respiratory tract. It produces something called antimicrobial peptides, which is your body's own antibiotics. And then if that little bugger does get in there and gets you sick, it produces calcisidrin, which is important for the healing process. So vitamin D is absolutely critical. One thing about your sleep habits, okay? If you can't sleep, you can't heal, right? But it's all about having, if you were to change one thing about your sleep habits, just get a good schedule. Get a routine, all right? Things that you need in your routine, try not to eat 2 to 3 hours before your bedtime, and I would put screen time in that too, and your gizmos and your gadgets, sorry guys. All right, so we know that screen basically stimulates parts of the brain that need to be relaxed if you're going to find sleep. All right, bedroom should be cool and dark, 65 degree. Jim, I finally found it. It took me 2 years. It should be 65 degrees. Finally, yeah, got that the other. Anyways, it should be cool and dark. You want to get rid of all the obnoxiously bright alarm clocks, the televisions, all those things. They produce light, and that light is going to stimulate is going to affect something called your pineal gland, and it's going to prevent you from producing serotonin and melatonin, feel-good hormones, sleepy hormones. Okay, and that's an important thing. Sleep time should be within 15 minutes either way. If I go to bed at 9:30. Early to bed is 9:15, late to bed is 9:45. Keep your wake times consistent if you're having a hard time with sleep, even on the weekends, all right? There's all sorts of really, really cool technology now that you can get on your smartphone, and basically it monitors your sleep cycles, and you pick a half-hour range where you want to wake up. Say, hey, I want to wake up between 5 and 5:30, and it monitors your sleep cycle, so when you're naturally coming out of a sleep cycle, that's when it wakes you up. All right. There's also things that like alarm clocks that wake you up to light. In other words, there are some cool things, that technology can help us with. So use those. One thing about your ergonomics, and I'm speaking to the choir here because I know you all take good care of your spine. All right. But the reality is, most of us are going to sit 32 years of our life. 32 years. All right. So hey, third of our life sitting, third of our life sleeping. Hey, we got a third of our life to play with, right? So when we sit, what happens is when we sit, we put tremendous amount of stress and strain on what we call your SI or your sacroiliac joints. All right. Also, when that happens, the spine has these natural curves that function like a spring that protects the spine and the nervous system. When you're sitting, those curves are lost. You turn your spring into a piston. That piston puts more pressure on these discs, especially the ones on the bottom, the ones that are compressed. All right. And then that's basically going to increase, once you lose those little bushings, you're going to put more stress onto the cord itself, and this whole system's going to really start to break down. So you really, really want to support your spine when you're sitting. All right? So I wouldn't recommend you sit like that. But some good sitting strategies is when you sit, harder to do in your car, but easier to do at your desk, the bump on your knee, what we call your fibula. Everyone find their bump on your knee, and if you can't find it, I'll be over later. And then your bump on your hip. This bump needs to be below this bump. There should be about a 3 to 5 degree angle down in through here. All right? If there's an angle, that means the SI joints are protected, and so the curves and everything else is not going to happen as bad, or to the degree. Of course, your feet want to contact the surface, and basically what they found is that when you go from a standing to a seated position, the pressure in your lumbar discs, that almost doubles. But if you put a 110-degree angle in your seat, that is reduced to less, all right, significantly less. So 110-degree angle is the best angle of your seat, all right? 50-10 rule, so for every hour that you're working, you should be standing up. I just read a cool little article that didn't make the press, but it basically says, hey, you know what? People that stand up throughout the day are the healthiest. I'll give that to you to give to somebody. All right? So sit on an unstable surface, a Dynadisc or a Physioball or one of my wedges. And I'm not talking about this type of wedge. You've seen the wedge that I'm talking about, right? What the wedge does is it's an ergonomic support that you sit on. It elevates the pelvis and puts an arc into the low back. It doesn't force the curve in, but it naturally supports it. Hydrate or die, every 4 ounces every hour, right? Remember, you're squishing and compressing your discs. Your body needs an abundance of water if we want to get that into the disc cell, all right? Otherwise, you're just going to make urine with it. Very, very cool. All right, so toot our own horn here. Chiropractors versus medical MDs, a 7-year study, 85% reduction in pharmaceuticals. Okay, the people that saw a chiropractor were, as far as their health goes, superior. All right, so good job. Thank you for being part of our practice. Thank you for allowing us to do our work. But basically the reason why this happens is because our job is really to get involved with your lifestyle, talk about what's important to you, and give you good solutions that are going to help get you to your goals. So what we've done here is we've talked about a lot of different things tonight, right? Well, it's really the web of wellness, to tell you the truth. So does everyone get that your diet is connected to your metabolism and your, you know what, guess what? Hey, sleep is really important for leptin and ghrelin too. Guess what? So hey, if your sleep's off, so is your metabolism. You know, so these are all connected, right? Just forget that this is a web for a second and pretend that this is a circle, okay? A wheel wagon, and each one of these things is a spoke, okay? And what I want you to do is I want you to kind of just rate yourself from 1 to 10. 10 being, hey, I do a really good job at it. 0 being, I really stink at that. As far as, hey, rate yourself on your diet. So diet meaning defined as, hey, the foods that you eat, are you eating the right foods? Okay, 1 to 10, are you eating the right foods? I think I do all right. All right? Metabolism is defined as, hey, how well do you think your body takes the nutrients from the food that you eat and uses it to run your body? In other words, what's the quality of the food that you're giving it? All right, yeah, I think I eat what she tells me to, so yeah. It was just be honest, right? Supplements, hey, you know, perfect. All right, my immune system, my wife's sick and she can't keep her hands off me, so I'm giving myself a 5. Told you, yes. Ergonomics, well, I have to nag you, so my ergonomics are pretty good. I do tend to beat myself up a little bit, so you know what? I'll give myself a lesser score, okay? Exercise, hey, I'm doing good with that. Sleep, I don't sleep. I have a 6-month-old, all right? So everyone's rated themselves 1 for 10. Now we want to make this wagon wheel spin, all right? So for me, if I want to get to the next level, if I want to be healthier next year than I am now, am I going to focus on my strengths or am I going to focus on my weaknesses? Right? So do you get if this was a wagon wheel and this wagon wheel was spinning, would you get that I would keep on having problems with my sleep? Right? Do you get that I would keep having problems with my immune system? And these two probably are related. Everyone get that? So, if you guys have seen our new Wall of Fame, we have a visitor in our audience, right? So Kirk, if you've read his story, he had an interesting year, right? One day found out, hey, I positive for prostate cancer. Months down the road, diabetes. I asked him today, well, how'd you get from where you were to where you are now? And he said, I just focused on what was next, and I focused on it, and I did it, and then what was next, and then what was next. He didn't do this. He did this, you know? So Does everyone get that? That what we want to do here is kind of relate that to that. In other words, what's first? Or what's next? For me, it's this. For you, it might be something else. Some of you might be completely lost. Say, my wheel looks like this, you know? So I'm here for you. I'm here to give you as much help as you want and as much help as you need. All right? So, again, remember, you have unlimited consultation block with me. You know, I'm not a hard person to get a hold of. You need to contact me through my website. And again, hey, I'm bribing you with this New Year's contest, for God's sakes, right? So do your homework, do your things that we've asked you to do with the program, and that's going to help me take care of you. All right, guys. So thank you for tonight. Thank you for being here, and let's get your questions your next visit before my babysitter runs away on us. I think that's what that was.